Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Aquatico Supercharger. This watch is available from aquaticowatch.com in two versions. With the Seiko NH35A it is $599 with the Sellita SW200-1 it is $799 respectively. This is the NH35A automatic version. So firstly let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with a piece. So the watch comes in this wooden watch box, stainless steel catch. There are two magnets in the hinged lid which attract two magnets in the base, and the watch box is fully lined with foam cutout panels and velour fabric, so that does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. And I think it's nice to get a wooden watch box rather than using the default option of a plastic or cardboard watch box. With regards to the items, one gets this owner's instruction manual in the form of a fold-out leaflet, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement, which is the Seiko NH35A automatic. One also gets this plastic guarantee card, and I'm pleased to report the Supercharger is covered by a 2-year warranty, and it also has a 30-day return policy, which is very good. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Aquatico Supercharger NH35A version. The dimensions are 43.2mm case diameter. We have a 50.2mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 15.8mm, and a lug width of 24mm. The isofrane rubber style strap tapers from 24mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang, and as you can see the buckle is signed to a high standard with Aquatico engraved. Good heavy gauge of metal to the 316L grade stainless steel, brush satin finish throughout, no sharp edges, no burrs, and it has the classic flat tang as per the isofrane strap, which this is an homage to, and the angular end cut. So I like the two keepers, they're nice and wide and they both slide rather than being fixed. So I'll show you the underside to the strap. Now this strap is quite thick, as you can see. It does taper, it's thicker at the spring bar end and it gradually tapers down to the buckle and tang end, but it does feel very stiff. It's a lot stiffer than a silicone rubber strap and it indicates that it's made from FKM rubber. FKM rubber is top grade, it's very durable, but the negative is it does require a lot of breaking in from daily wear because it's not as soft and supple as silicone rubber. Now the negative of this strap is they've made the mistake of using conventional spring bars. Now this is 24mm wide and it's very thick and it's FKM rubber, so it's a lot stiffer. Therefore it's going to be difficult to get a spring bar tool in between the interior of the lugs and also the edge of the strap in order to remove the spring bar. It's a shame that they didn't use quick release spring bars because that would negate the need for using a spring bar tool, and it's okay to use standard spring bars with a silicone rubber strap because the silicone rubber compresses easily with a spring bar tool. But with FKM rubber it's very stiff and therefore really it does need quick release spring bars because it's harder to compress the rubber, and therefore there's the risk of damaging the interior of the lugs. The other thing they could have done as an alternative is drill the lugs, and one could use a spring bar tool externally to push the spring bar in and therefore remove it. So I think they've made a mistake on that, but having said that, the isofrane style strap is perfectly smooth and it does have this rib section, but the rest of it is smooth on the top side and underside, and it is very aesthetically pleasing. Plenty of slots for the flat tang to allow for fine tuning to get the perfect length. So, with regards to the rest of the specification, we have a screw-down exhibition case back, which is glazed with mineral crystal, and the screw-down exhibition case back provides an effective hermetic seal to 1,000 meters, which is very strong specification. Very well executed. The milled slops don't have any sharp edges or burrs, and it's concentric brush satin finished, and very well machined and engraved to a high standard with the specification and the reference number of the piece. Now this is one of 999 pieces, and if you look closely at the 6 o'clock side of the case you can see that it says this is number 418 of 999, so it's not a limited edition but it is a numbered piece, number 418, so that's a nice touch. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an excellent job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the sapphire crystal. So the dial has printed indices rather than being applied, and it's a mixture because we have BGW9 Superloom Nova on the ceramic bezel insert, and on the dial and hands we have tritium. So the tritium is called GTLS tritium, and GTLS stands for gaseous tritium light source. There are two different types of tritium used. On the dial we have T100 tritium, and on the hands we have T25. Now, the other thing is they've loomed the ends of the hands, which are Amiga broad arrow style hands, with different coloured loom. As you can see, it's green, and that contrasts with the tritium tubes on the body of the hands. So interesting combination to use tritium on the dial and hands, but then use BGW9 on the ceramic bezel insert. So with regards to the rest of the specification, we have a screw down crown, coin edge finished, and it is a large crown, and it's signed with the Aquatico emblem to a good standard. The screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 1000 meters, which again is very strong specification. So let's test the screw down crown execution. Absolutely silky smooth, no friction whatsoever, perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So normally one would expect this to have 300 meters, 1000 meters is very high specification. So in the first position, it's the manual wind position, and one can manually wind the Seiko NH35A automatic to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Absolute pleasure to manually wind the 35A. It feels very smooth. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. And interesting choice of date position between the 4 and 5 o'clock index on the dial. I personally would prefer a 3 o'clock or alternatively 6 o'clock position, but however this is subjective. For the majority of collectors, they might actually like the date window being sighted between the 4 and 5 o'clock indices on the dial. The quick set complication works well, nice positive click to each day of the month clicking over, which is a characteristic of the 35A. Putting it out to the second click position hacks the movement. So we're now in the time setting position. It's possible to hack the 35A to set the time precisely to the second. Nice firm resistance to the 35A, no backplay clockwise and anti-clockwise, and it feels very smooth. So absolute pleasure to set the time. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. So let's test screwing it back down. Immediate thread pickup. This is outstanding screw down crown execution, silky smooth, no friction, and the threads interface perfectly. The crown immediately picks up the thread on the stainless steel crown tube, so it's a very well made crown, and 1000 meters is very good specification. It's a large crown, so it's easy to get a grip of it, and the coin edge finishing is done to a good standard, and it doesn't have a sharp edge or burr to it because it's got a nice chamfer machined on the end. So with regards to the bezel, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, low profile, coin edge finished, and inlaid with a ceramic bezel insert, which is fully loomed with BGW9 Superloom Nova. So let's test the bezel execution. Nice loud audible clicks, which sound very satisfying. Firm resistance to it, I would describe it as lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 139, but heavier than a Seiko Turtle or a Seiko 5KX. Now, it's a 120 click unidirectional bezel, but it does have a very heavy ratcheting mechanism. It feels much heavier than a Seiko bezel action. One can feel each click of the 120 clicks. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. Very satisfying to use. I like the firm resistance to it. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever. No back play whatsoever. So it's a nice tight bezel action, but very firm. Not as firm as a Steinhardt Ocean 139, but significantly firmer in resistance than a Seiko bezel action. So it's in between the two. And I like it. It sounds good, feels good. Nice positive clicks. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play. Let's just check the alignment. Perfect. The loom pip and the red triangle perfectly aligned with the 12 o'clock index on the dial, so very well indexed, and I like the alignment, is perfect. There's a nice projection of the flat sapphire crystal. It's got a bevel machined on the edge, which projects just above the sloped ceramic bezel insert, so I like the profile of the flat sapphire crystal and the profile of the ceramic bezel insert. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I'm pleased to report this does actually just fit my 8-inch wrist. As you can see, there's enough length on the isofrane style strap to engage the end of it in both of the sliding keepers, which is good. As you'll know from my previous reviews, it's often the case that watches have bracelets and straps which are a fraction too short, but this actually does fit up to an 8-inch wrist, which is good. it's clearly made for collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches because it is a large piece at 43.2 diameter by 50.2. Now the lug-to-lug measurement is slightly long at 50.2. I would prefer if they had shortened this down to 48, which is the perfect lug-to-lug measurement. That is the sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. At 50.2, this is clearly too long for collectors with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, and really it's only a watch that can be worn by collectors with a 7 to 8 inch wrist. It's a tall piece at 15.8, so needless to say, it's not easily going to slip underneath the shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, and that's something to consider. Circa 13mm is the sweet spot for watches to be low profile enough to slip underneath the shirt cuff. 15.8 is clearly too tall, but of course this is 1000 meters water resistant, so therefore they had to make the crystal, the case and the case back thick enough to withstand 1000 meters of pressure. So that is the negative trade-off. It is a tall and thick piece. Now 24mm is a wide lug width. I think they should have made it 22. Yes, the 24mm isofrane style strap does balance the head of the piece well. 20 would clearly be undersized, but 24 is really not popular, and that does limit the strap options because there are not as many straps available in 24. 20 and 22 are the industry standard, and even for a 43mm diameter case, I think 22 would have been better. It just would have meant more strap options, and of course it is a shame that they didn't use quick release spring bars. But having said that, it does wear comfortably, although it does feel top heavy on the rubber strap. Now 156 grams does give a feeling of heft, and I would say if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you will find it to be too top heavy and too long at 50.2. It really does sit on the wrist. It doesn't wrap around the wrist. It feels like a square slab of 316L grade stainless steel rather than being a curved tonneau case. So that's something to note. The angular lugs don't wrap around the wrist. They're very straight and vertical, as you can see. I think they should have used more curved lug profile to the lugs and made the case wrap around the wrist rather than using the two rectangular shaped slabs which are screwed together with the 4 hex screws. So there is room for improvement. Had they used a tonneau style case, it would have meant the case wraps around the wrist rather than sitting upon the wrist on top of the wrist bone. So it is a comfortable piece to wear, but it does feel heavy, and wearing the piece for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, the 156 grams does feel like it has heft, and one really does feel the wrist presence. So I would say it is comfortable to wear for short periods of time, but for longer periods such as 8 to 12 hours, it does feel heavy, and one is conscious of it being top heavy at 156 grams on the isofrane style strap. So good looking piece, but not as comfortable as one would like. I think they should have made this in a 40mm version or a 41. 43 really is very large by 50.2. And with a 24mm lug width, it would have been better in 22. So feel good factor is good, comfort level is okay, there is room for improvement on it, and I think that had they made the case back and the underside of the case curved as per a tonneau case rather than being flat, that would have enhanced the comfort, and they could have reduced the thickness down from 15.8 down to 14 to 15mm just to make it more wearable and more balanced. Right, so let's do a Loom test and we'll see how the Loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So we've got a combination of Loom on this watch. We've got GTLS tritium, and we've also got BGW9 Superluminova, and we've got two different types of tritium, T100 on the dial and T25 on the broad arrow style hands. Right, so that's now fully charged. Now, as you can see, it's disappointing because we have tritium on the dial and tritium on the hands. And I'm very disappointed with the performance of the tritium, both the T100 on the dial and the T25 used on the hands. As you can see, it looks like the tritium isn't performing, and it really should do. Now, just for clarity, I'm going to show you. When I hold my 100 UV LED torch above it, you can see that it does excite the tritium, both the T100 on the dial and the T25. But this is GTLS, so it really should be top grade tritium, and therefore it should be exciting the tritium loom. And it does excite the BGW9, as you can see on the ceramic bezel insert, but when I move it away, you can see the tritium tubes on the broad arrow hands, they fade to nothing. And also the printed tritium on the indices, they're not applied, they're actually printed. it looks like it's not charged at all. So I'm just going to charge it once again to show you. And bear in mind, this is 100 UV LEDs, and that should be enough to charge up the tritium to its absolute peak. It's pure UV light, so that should really charge the T100 and T25 to its absolute limit. So as you can see, even with full charging, the chapter ring minute ticks are loomed, as you can see, and they are glowing okay. And the green loom used on the broad arrow hands, which is also tritium, that is performing okay. It's just a shame they didn't use BGW9 Super Loom Nova, because if you contrast the dial and hands with the BGW9 on the ceramic bezel insert, the ceramic bezel insert is performing very well. The minute ticks are clearly indexed, the Arabic numerals are nicely inlaid, nice tone of blue BGW9. But contrast that with the performance of the T100 and T25 on the dial and hands, and it really is night and day difference. Really, it's very disappointing. And bear in mind, we're not looking at a $100 watch here. This is $599, so it's wholly unacceptable. I don't know why they use poor quality tritium, T100 and T25. This watch had the potential to impress, and really I think they should have just used BGW9 on the dial hands and ceramic bezel insert. So they've made a real mistake with this, and it's very disappointing. Right, so let's discuss the movement used. So this supercharger is available in two options. The NH35A, which you're looking at here, is $599, and the SW200-1 version is $799 respectively. So $200 price difference. I don't think it's worth paying the additional $200 premium to upgrade from the 35A to the SW200-1. The NH35A is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. This version is made in Japan rather than being made in Malaysia. Seiko have two plants making the 35A in Japan and Malaysia respectively. It has 24 joules and it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. It has hand winding and hacking, which is useful complications. And the stated accuracy of the 35A is -20 to +40 seconds per day. So a rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report this one has been well regulated and it's running consistently at +7 seconds per day, which is good for a 35A. So correct choice of movement, but however, bear in mind this is $599. The 35A is acceptable in $200 and $300 watches, but when one gets to $599 within the mid-tier, really one has to expect a higher grade of movement, such as the SW200-1 or the ETA 2824-2. At a minimum, I would expect this to have a PT5000. Really, it's pushing it to have a 35A at $599. Now, yes, they do offer the SW200-1, but of course that's $799, which again is very expensive. I think they should be offering the SW200-1 version at this price point, $599. It's really not good value to have an NH35A in a $599 piece. I think it's a shortcoming with the specification. Now, yes, one has to appreciate this is 1,000 meters water resistant. We're not looking at a 300 meter water resistant watch. 1,000 meters is very strong. It does have AR coating and it does have BGW9, so that's all good. But the tritium has really disappointed. The T100 on the dial and the T25 on the hands, I really would have expected stronger performance. So, lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, difficult to weigh this up because there are some strengths and there are also some weaknesses with regards to the quality. Yes, the quality of the case finishing, the bezel finishing, the crown and also the case mark are all outstanding. But however, although it's 1,000 meters, I'm very disappointed by the dial and hand performance, the tritium. They should have just used BGW9, and I also think they made the mistake of using a mismatch with the colour because we've got green loom in the triangles in the broad arrow style hands, and that clashes with the blue tone of the BGW9 on the bezel. And I think that they should have just used BGW9 throughout and had blue loom on the bezel inserts, the dial and the hands, and the BGW9 would have performed better. So there are some strengths and some weaknesses, and really I think at $599 it's unacceptable to have those kind of weaknesses. Yes, it does have excellent bezel action, yes it does have excellent crown execution, but however one cannot have weak performance tritium on the dial and hands at this price point. One could be more magnanimous about it if this was only $100, but at $599 it is an expensive piece and one has to get things like the loom correct. So room for improvement, and I would actually like to see Aquatico change over to using BGW9 and delete the tritium because it really is negligible performance. They tried to make it a selling point, but really it disappoints. So I'm going to say it is okay quality, but I'm going to say it's poor value, and for that reason I cannot recommend it to you. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Aquatico Supercharger. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.